welcome to the Renewals with Revenue Management course. This is going to be an in-depth look at what process should look like every single month when we utilize revenue management in our renewal process. If you are a brand new manager or assistant manager to the company, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to have an understanding of what we should be doing every single month. If you're a seasoned property manager with Morgan, this will be a great refresher for you to understand what this standardized process should look like. So we're going to go through a few reports within YieldStar, make sure that you have a clear understanding of how we can utilize each of those reports in the process. We're actually going to look at your Yardi dashboard as well and understand how we can review some of the data that we see on our dashboard every day to ensure that, again, we're using these systems as best as we can together. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. As a company, we have a standardized process that we utilize, and it's a cyclical process. Every month we do the exact same thing. So what we want to ensure that we do is begin with strategizing. So we want to come up with a strategy every month as far as what we're trying to achieve with the next batch of renewals that we're going to send out. And those strategy conversations can happen at many different points of the process. So perhaps you're having a conversation with your regional manager and they're just asking you simple questions like what's going on with the pending renewals that have been sent out so far. Or maybe the conversation is had during your monthly call with your revenue manager. And that's really, at that point is when we're really going to set everything in stone to ensure that when we do generate the rates, as though that does happen within the revenue management department, that we're generating them according to what our goals and strategy truly is for that batch. So we're going to strategize and then we're going to generate. So our renewals are generated one time a month. Excuse me, our renewal rates are generated one time a month, and that's going to happen on the 15th. Now, if the 15th falls on a weekend, then we're going to click our button on the Monday following the 15th. But either way, once the renewal rates have been generated in YieldStar, it's very important that you as the manager or assistant manager log in and review those offers. So you want to ensure that you're reviewing them on the 15th, or again, if the 15th had fallen on a weekend, that you're reviewing them the following Monday. I'm going to take you through a report, make sure you have a good understanding of how to review these offers. And then after we review them, or excuse me, after you review them, you do want to ensure that you're sending them to your regional manager for approval. So we're going to talk about how to make some notes on that report to make it a nice, easy communication process between the two of you. If the regional manager approves the letters the exact same day that you review them, and you review them the exact same day that they're generated in YieldStar, we cannot yet generate letters in Yardi. Letters can be generated in Yardi after your regional manager approves, but not the same day they're generated in YieldStar. The reason for that is that Yardi and YieldStar are two completely different websites that we log into, and they don't continually talk back and forth. There's only a data feed one time a day, and that data feed occurs at night. So say we generate our offers on the 15th. You review them, your regional manager reviews them, and they say this looks good. You would still need to wait until the 16th to generate those letters, or the offers that generate on your Yardi letters will not match the rates that were generated in YieldStar. So very important that we remember that. Last piece of this is that after we generate those letters and we send them out, we have to follow up. And this follow-up piece really applies to this entire process. We have to follow up daily with our pending expirations. So this is what that standardized process should look like. So it's really important that we understand that process, but stepping back from that process in general, it's really important that we just understand what we should be doing with renewals in general. Renewals are like new leases, but most of the hard work is truly already done. Their stuff's already in the apartment. So it's not as difficult as a new lease can sometimes be because somebody's making that hard decision to move into your community. This resident is already there, so that hard work is done. But it does not mean that we don't have to still sell that renewal. Renewals should still be sold the same way that we sell new leases. We should be building value in our customer service, in the experience that our customers get in our community. We should build value in their home that they've made home for however long they've made it home, in the community and the things that they've partaken in since they've been in the community that you might know about, the location of the property, and then regardless what the rate is, whether they're getting a minimal increase, a big increase, it should make that sales process, it should make it a lot easier to build value as long as we're selling it in that way. Pending renewals should be followed up with daily. So every single day when we're working our renewals is an opportunity to create that sense of urgency, to get that renewal executed, to get that renewal contract signed, because once that's executed, we need to ensure that we're entering that to Yardi daily as well. So if you've been through any of the management courses with us, or if you've been with us for longer than a week, I'm sure you've heard people talking about how our renewal pricing, our renewal performance has a direct impact on our new lease pricing. So absolutely vital that renewals are executed and entered daily. In general, communication is key here. Communication with your resident to understand what their intentions are, how quickly we can get that renewal signed. Communication with your regional team to ensure they understand what our expected performance should look like. And communication with your revenue manager as well, so that we can all ensure that we're moving the property in the right direction with the most accurate information we possibly can. So with that, let's go ahead and get into what some of the actual daily process is going to look like, as far as some reports that you might want to look at. And before we start to, before we generate or really come up with a ton of strategy for what we're going to send out for the next batch of renewals, we have to understand what's still outstanding. So kind of going right back to that, following up with renewals daily. A lot of our teams utilize a renewal binder, which is a fantastic thing to utilize to help you keep track of communication, right? But a renewal binder does not necessarily mean whatever's notated in there has adequately been communicated to Yardi, communicated to your regional, to your revenue manager. The easiest way to ensure this stuff is communicated is to make sure that it's entered, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at our Yardi Voyager dashboard. And let me show you a great way to just quickly look at this when you're looking at that dashboard. So under the resident activity section, you've got this section that says expiring leases. And the number of expiring leases is blue and underlined, meaning it's a hyperlink. So we can actually click on this. And when we do, you're going to see your expiring leases populate down here at the bottom. Now, at the top of the list, you're going to see the oldest date, and then the further down the list you go, the further into the future, or the closer to the current date, I should say, you're going to see. So, for example, this particular property has some month-to-months, so those are always going to be here at the top of the list. So you could see the dates going back to 2016, 2017, but as we scroll, we move into April 2018, June 2018, July 2018, August 2018. September, and then now to the current calendar month that we're in as I'm making this video, to October. So you can see that we had a few people roll month to month at the end of last month. Again, understanding who your residents are, these names should look familiar. This is also a great way to say, oh, you know what? Terrence did sign a lease contract. But it's in this list, meaning it's not, the renewal workflow has not been finished. So very easy to go ahead and follow in that workflow and get that entered. But looking ahead, right, what's still pending, what's still outstanding? Today's current calendar date is October 5th, and you'll notice we still have several leases at this property expiring at the end of October. So that would be my starting point. What is going on with these residents? Cross-check this against your renewal binder. Perhaps it says renewed in the renewal binder. So we check the file, the lease contract's there, and oops, someone just forgot to enter it. It can be that easy to catch. A really great place to look at that. Now, what I also recommend while you're here is not just looking at the current calendar month. Ensure that we're looking at all leases that are expiring between the current calendar date and the end of where we've already sent our renewals out. So currently we've sent out through the end of December, so I would be following up with everybody listed here to ensure I know what's going on with them. So this is a great way to do it every day in Yardi, but there's also a fantastic report within YieldStar that we can utilize as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce over here into YieldStar, and just like every other report in YieldStar, we're going to click on the Reports tab to access the Renewal Summary. The title of this report is called the Renewal Summary Report. It's located just here at the top. Renewal Summary. We're going to click there. I'm using this property just as a subject property. So a couple of good notes to make here. When you're pulling the date range for the renewal summary, you cannot start it as of the current calendar date. You have to start it as of the day after. So I mentioned today is October 5th, so I'm going to type in October 6th, 2018, and I'm going to go all the way to the end date of whatever date range we've sent renewal letters out for. It's important to remember that we change the floor plan. We don't want to just pull this for individual unit floor plans typically. I personally like to pull it for all floor plans. So I'm going to click there. And under rate type, I wouldn't leave it as summary. Summary doesn't show you nearly as much information. So I like to select detail. Make no changes to this section here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this as a PDF. Some like to pull it as an Excel document. Completely your choice. But when I click display, you're going to notice what populates is our renewal summary for the date range that we entered here, right? So this top section, the summary of responses, is going to show you, it's really going to break it out as far as what percentage increase or decreases were sent out. So increases between 0 and 5%, you've got a column that shows you how many renewed, how many gave us notice, and there's that famous TBD column, how many of those are still outstanding. And then you can see decreases of -5 to 0, decreases less than -5, and then of course you can go in the opposite direction. You can see increases between 5 and 10, increases between 10 and 15, so forth and so on. So that's just the summary. As I mentioned, I pulled this by detail, so I like to look down here in this second section. You've got your unit numbers listed just here. You can see what their current term was. You can see the current offer, the lease term that they're currently on. And then if you look over here to the status column, you can see those that have already given you notice or those that are still to be determined. So it looks a little different than what you're going to see in Yardi, but very easy to see as of last night's data feed who had not been entered quite yet. Something else that's kind of cool is you can take a look at the offer term best price here, and you can get a quick little sneak peek at what type of increases were sent out to these residents. So for example, apartment G125, their best term had no increase on it. So anybody that had no increase whatsoever, that might be somebody I would really dig into, right? That should be a really easy sell. We're not even raising their rent. If you see some that have larger increases, through the next few pages, we're going to understand how they could end up with an increase of a 9.9%, for example. But either way, we know that when we talk to the resident in J125, we might have a little bit more selling to do, right? But these are the ones that need to, we're ensuring that we're working every single day, we're getting those contracts out there, getting these executed, and getting them entered. So a couple of great ways for you to be able to review what is still outstanding before we even move into that next month. And the great thing about what I just showed you is this is something that can be done every single day. This, if you're a property manager that's not as involved with that renewal process every day, this is something you could look at weekly, maybe in preparation for your conversation with your staff member that is responsible for renewals. A great way to keep your finger on the pulse of that. So after we've reviewed what's outstanding, we strategize, and then it's going to be time to generate and review our renewal offers. So it's important to understand the parameters that we discuss every single month. What do those mean? And then we're also going to talk about the renewal offer analysis report itself, which is the report that you're going to review to see what's been generated from the system. So there's a couple of parameters that we're going to mess with each month. Sometimes we will make changes, sometimes we won't. But you're going to hear terminology like the min and the max. And the min and the max do not mean what a lot of times you would think they would mean. So let's start with the min parameter. Whatever minimum percentage we put in here does not mean that everyone is going to see a minimum increase of this. The min parameter is going to increase only residents, or excuse me, is going to affect only the increase for residents paying more than the current market value. So a lot of times in property management, people expect that their rent's going to go up at the end of the lease. So we'll have these discussions with you and we'll say, who's expiring, and how many people are currently paying more than the current market value, and do we have opportunity to try to get some type of increase out of those residents. And if the case is yes, then we'll convey to the system that minimum percentage. The other parameter that we mess with is called the max percentage. Again, thinking about the title, max, you would think, well, this is the maximum amount we would want anybody to get an increase for, and that is not the case. The max parameter will apply to the increases for residents currently paying less than the current market value. So in other words, if somebody's under our current market value for their apartment, what's the maximum percentage that we want to increase them to get them closer to what that current market value would be? Okay, so this is all part of that strategic conversation that we're going to have with you every month. But then, as I mentioned, once we've done this, we've clicked that generate button, you as a manager need to log in and actually take a look at what has been generated. So that's where we're going to go back to YieldStar, and we're going to look at that renewal offer analysis report. So since I did not just generate renewals, we're going to pretend that we just generated the December batch. So you're going to go in and put in your December date range, December 1st through December 31st. Again, to reiterate, this is our renewal offer analysis report. Date range would be the date range of the time frame that we just generated offers for. You want to again change the floor plan from just one floor plan to all. And here I do not recommend that you pull this report in PDF. I recommend you pull this report in Excel. And there's a reason for that in just a moment. So when you click display, depending on what your computer makes you do, it's possible it might make you save first. Sometimes it just pops up for you. But either way, we will want to save this report because we're going to make some notes on it. So I'm going to title this my property's name, Renewal Offer Analysis, December 2018. Now, you do not have to use this naming solution necessarily, but I just do that on my specific desktop, okay? Just make sure you name this something. I would definitely put your property name in there somewhere because this will be the report that gets sent to your regional manager for approval. All right, so now that I've saved it, my computer's going to let me open it, so I'm going to simply click here. And this is our renewal offer analysis report for all renewals that rates were generated for in the date range that we had requested. So I want to make sure we understand this, the actual renewal offer analysis itself. So we're going to look at this kind of section by section, because there's a lot of information on here, but it's a lot of great information as long as you understand how to read it. So a couple things I'm going to point out to start with right up here at the top. First of all, you're going to see the unit number itself. So as a manager, assistant manager, who lives in that apartment? Who's going to be getting this offer? That's kind of where my mind would start. The next thing you're going to see on here is when the renewal offer was generated. So this particular offer was generated last month. Now, some other information listed up here, but nothing of any necessarily something that you're going to take note of every single month. The next section we're going to talk about is the current lease section. And what the current lease section is going to show you is exactly what it sounds like. What is the lease term the resident is currently on? They're on a 6-month lease. What day does their lease actually expire in this date range, which is the 11th of December? You've got gross rent concession, amenities are in there, and then you see last month's effective rent. And that's going to be a biggie because last month's effective rent is what we use, what the system uses kind of as a starting point when it's trying to understand whether or not your resident is currently above or below new lease pricing. Okay, so just to kind of recap so far, we're looking at the offer for G125. This thing was generated on September 17th. Apartment G125, they're currently on a 6-month lease that expires on the 11th of December, and they're paying $14.19 a month. Now the section to the right hand side here is just going to reiterate a few of the items that I just said. The system, when it's applying its minimum or maximum percentage, is going to apply that min or max to the same term that they're currently on, which in this case is that 6-month lease. As I mentioned, the system is going to use last month's effective rent for its baseline as far as understanding where this resident is in relation to the new lease pricing. So that's why you see $14.19 here. So everything we've covered so far is really talking about the resident's current lease details and what the system is going to use when applying the min or the max. So now we're going to look to the right hand side here at the same term new lease pricing. And you'll notice in parentheses here it says at time of pricing. So whenever we clicked the button on September 17th on a 6-month lease, apartment G125, current market value would have been $12.49 a month. So I want to pause here because what we should be doing is taking note of whether or not this current resident is paying more or less than what we would get off the street. And in this case, they're paying more than new lease pricing. Okay? So now what we're going to do is look down here on the left-hand side under the current lease details, and these are going to be all of the offers that the system has generated as far as what it wants us to send out on this next batch of renewal letters. It's going to have our shortest term lease right up here at the top, which of course is our month-to-month option, and the longest term lease that we offer will be down here at the bottom. Lease terms can fluctuate from month to month as far as the maximum term that we send out, but as a company, the maximum term we want to send out is going to be up to a 13-month lease with renewals. So typically that's what you're going to see it as. If we look to the column right next to term, you're going to see the lease end date. So with our company, we don't always end the leases on the last day of the month. We don't always allow the leases to expire naturally. We actually allow our system to help pick our lease end dates to ensure that we're smoothing out patterns and trends throughout the month. So you're going to see all the lease end dates that should be utilized depending on which term the customer chooses to renew at. Then you've got your rent column, and then you've got your increase over last month's effective rent. Okay? The next section here to the right-hand side is the new lease at the time of pricing. So again, similar to right up here in this section, same term new lease pricing at the time of pricing. When we click the button on September 17th, this is what we would have been able to get. For current market rate on each one of these lease terms. And it's kind of interesting to look at the relationship between these two columns. Now, because this report is available on demand, you also see the columns to the right-hand side here, which is new lease rates at the time of report. So, of course, if you're reviewing these on the exact same day that the offers were generated in YieldStar, these two sections should match each other. But in this case, this was generated 2 weeks ago, so you'll notice that the rates have actually gone up slightly from back on September 17th when we generated these. So this new lease at time of report is going to show us the current market value for each one of the lease terms as of the day that we pulled the report. The middle section shows you the new lease market value for each one of the lease terms when we generated the offers, and then the far left-hand section here is showing you what the system wants to send out. Okay, so hopefully that was a good little review of each one of these sections so you understand how they work in tandem. But again, taking a little step back from this, what are we sending out to this resident? Taking a look at some of these longer-term leases, you see some 0% increases on here. This customer is paying more than new lease pricing, significantly more than new lease pricing. So at this particular property, they made what I would say is a very wise decision, which is this is a bread and butter resident. They're currently paying a lot more than we can get off the street, so we're not really going to do anything with their rent because we want them to renew right now. But again, that's simply the strategy of this property. You and your regional manager might say, hey, yes, they're paying more, but everybody expects to get an increase. Therefore, let's make sure they get a 1%. And then we would have used that minimum parameter to make sure that they got a minimum 1% increase on here. So the great thing about having this report in Excel is that you're actually able to make notes right off here to the side, because this is going to be the document, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that you send to your regional manager for approval. So say, for example, you decide that this person's on a short-term lease, they're paying $14.19, $11.56, $11.36 is what we're getting on the front end. We're not going to drop their rent, so that's why the system is not giving them any increase at all here. It's just keeping it flat. But if for some reason it's within your strategy to say, you know what, I want to actually allow for decreases on these longer-term leases to be a little bit more competitive with what my new lease rates are, that's something that you would want to seek approval from your regional manager on. So it's a great thing to type in right over here to the side. Short-term lease offer lower rates on longer terms to try and get them to renew longer term. May make sense to some of you. That verbiage may not make sense to everyone. So not necessarily, again, the comment that you have to provide, but you just want to convey a message to your regional manager as far as what you think about this offer. As we move down the list here, we see apartment J123. They're currently on a 13-month lease, and they're paying us $786 a month. The current pricing, whenever we generated this report, was $856. So in this case, our resident is currently way below our new lease pricing here, right? So when we look down here to the offers that the system's generated, you'll notice that this resident is actually getting an increase. But that increase only takes them up to $809, if you notice right down here on longer term leases. If you look at the pricing available at the time that we generated the pricing, that $856 displays there. And then at the time of the report, rates have actually gone up just a little bit more and we could get $860. So again, another great thing to keep in mind, because if this resident in J123 comes in, we can easily tell them, look, I know you're getting a 2.9% increase, but the great thing is it's not any bigger, because right now our new lease rates are up to $860 for the similar terms, and we're only giving you a 2.9% increase. We're not even bringing you all the way up to those current market rates, so you're still getting a fantastic deal. And all of this just from reviewing this renewal offer analysis report. If you feel good about this one, good to go. Or maybe don't leave any comments whatsoever. It depends on whatever you and your regional manager, how you want to communicate. And then we would just continue working our way down the renewal offer analysis report one by one, making sure that nothing stuck out to us as looking kind of crazy. Okay? So actually, speaking of something that might look a little bit crazy, let's go ahead and take a look at apartment J125. This particular person is on a 3-month lease term. Their current rent is $1182 is what we're seeing. Looks like current market value on a 3-month lease is $1645. Woohoo! Keep in mind, that's on a 3-month lease. So now we're going to look down to all of the different pricing, and sure, that 3-month lease, we see the $1645 over here for new lease rates. The system would actually be charging a lot more than $1645. It looks like we might be overexposed on that 3-month lease there. But as you work your way down the list, you'll notice rates definitely get a lot more reasonable than a 44% increase. Rates go flat. Again, we're not going to raise this person's rent because they're currently paying more than our new lease pricing over here on our longer term leases, but the system's programmed to not drop their rent either. If you're okay with this offer, again, good to go. Making your note and moving on with your life. So once you've completed this, I recommend you save it and then generate that email to your regional manager and let them know that your renewals are ready for approval. Have them take a look at that report. So that's our renewal offer analysis report. We've now gotten to the stage where we've looked at it. We should understand what each one of these columns mean, and we've sent it off to our regional manager for approval. Now, there are times where we might need to make some additional requests. So perhaps the standard offers that we sent out aren't completely all-inclusive. And what I mean by that is perhaps you're at a site where you've got some month-to-months. So maybe this month we feel like it's a good time to send out some month-to-month offers to people. Or perhaps some of the offers that we reviewed or that you reviewed and that you sent to your regional manager, maybe the two of you agreed that something didn't look right on those. So you would need to reach out to the revenue management department directly to ask for rates to be generated for or regenerated for either one of those scenarios. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, some additional monthly requests. I want to start with the idea of these month-to-months. So when we were looking in Yardi and we were specifically looking at the subject community that I had pulled up, you'll notice as I scrolled through the list that this property actually had quite a few month-to-months in the list. So obviously we don't want our month-to-month people just rolling month-to-month forever, right? So talk to your regional manager about that and find out if it's a good month for y'all to try to start getting some of these month-to-monthers converted to leases. And the first place that I would really start is right up here with your leased and occupancy percentages. So if you're leased and occupied quite well, that might be a sign that we should go ahead and try to convert some of these. That's in Yardi, but there's also a really great place to look within YieldStar as well, because YieldStar is going to give you a little bit more future visibility into what those lease trends look like. So we're going to pop over to our YieldStar dashboard, and we're going to click on our pricing review tab, because this is where we go every morning to review our rents. And we're going to look simply at that custom dashboard, that nice easy dashboard that y'all look at daily. We're going to change this to the property that we were looking at in Yardi. And you'll notice here, this is not just going to show me a generalized lease and occupancy trend. It's going to break it down floor plan by floor plan. So you can see at this property, we're actually leased all the way up to 97% in our 2 beds, and we're leased at 96% in our 3 beds. So I would probably start with my 2 bedrooms here, looking back to that Yardi dashboard and saying, how many 2 bedrooms are in here starting at the top of the list, and how many of these do we want to send month-to-month offers out for? Now, once you come up with that list of people, you will, as I mentioned, need to communicate that to the revenue management department. And it's really quite easy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you where you need to send that and just how simple that message can be to ensure that you're communicating the information that we're needing to get this completed for you. So what you're going to want to do is send the email to revenuemanagement@morgancommunities.com. And our recommendation is that you just use your property name, in the subject line here, and then what type of requests are going to be within the email. And you don't have to get too bright and bubbly in here. You can if you want to, if that's your personality, but just letting us know, need offers generated for month-to-month residents. Please start offers on December 1st for the following. And then just list them out. Now, we do recommend that you CC your regional manager, so we're just going to throw any regional manager on here for now, to ensure that your regional manager is kept within that communication loop that I was talking about earlier as far as what we're trying to send out. Once you send this email over to our department, we're going to respond and let you know that the offers are available to review on that renewal offer analysis report. Very simple. Take a look, just like we went through a few moments ago. Make sure you're satisfied with those offers. Get regional approval on them, and then the following day, as long as everybody's on the same page, you agree with them, those rates will feed over to Yardi, and you would be able to generate those renewal letters in a batch of their own. So that's one additional request that we can seek for assistance with from the revenue management department. But something else might be the case that I brought up when looking at this renewal offer analysis report. So on the offer for J125, this particular resident is going to get 1182 offers for just about every lease term on this list. And I mentioned earlier on another offer, if you decide that you wanted to offer lower rates on longer term leases to try to get them to renew longer, in this case, especially since it's a 3-month, this might be a reason that a regional manager would approve it. If they're willing to sign up to a 12-month, then we'll give them somewhat of a break. If that's the type of exception request that you have, again, very simple. Send an email with your regional manager attached. Send that email to revenuemanagement@morgancommunities.com. Rather than month-to-month in the subject line, I would just say adjustment to December renewals. And then I would just say, please allow for lower rates on longer term leases. Residents below are currently short term. And then provide that list right there. So hopefully the consistency that you're seeing between these emails that I've shown you here is really just ensuring that you're saying, where's this email coming from? What are we needing to do, right? So it's coming from Steeplechase, and we're needing to make an adjustment for December renewals. And what are you hoping to achieve? Let's see it. We're wanting lower rates on those longer term leases. So not a whole lot of information that you have to provide, but clearly communicating is really that key. And again, ensuring that we're CCing our regional manager on that. Ideally, our regional manager would respond with approval for that. Many times our department would require that, because if we do allow for rates to go down from the current existing rate, or excuse me, the existing rate, then it's possible we could see some negative trade there. So we want to ensure that we are sticking within the strategy of your regional management team. So those are some additional monthly requests. What we've covered so far is really just understanding that standardized process. We talked about how to review that TBD report, or excuse me, the renewal summary report, to keep your finger on the pulse of anybody that's still outstanding as far as our pending expirations, and also being able to do that just with your Yardi dashboard as well. And then of course we walked through that renewal offer analysis report and understanding how to read that. So just ensure that if you do make, or if you request any edits, when we do generate letters, I can't tell you how many times this has happened, people generate letters in Yardi too early. Make a note for yourself. If we've made any edits or completed additional monthly requests, don't forget that we have to wait until the following day to generate those letters in Yardi. So we've gone through the process of generating rates, reviewing them, getting a regional approval, following up, and then again strategizing for our next renewal batch that we're going to be sending out for the next month. So I hope that you found this renewal course to be beneficial. Hopefully I laid out clearly and in a concise manner what the expectation is every single day, every single month when we do this process. So don't hesitate to reach out if you do happen to have any questions. We're always here to assist. Your regional manager is there to assist, but revenue management at Morgan Communities is an effective way to communicate with the entire revenue management team. We're happy to assist. So thanks so much for your time. If you're new, welcome to the team. If you're an existing manager, thanks so much for taking the time to make sure that we get this right the first time and we minimize do-overs every single month. Go ahead and click on the next link in the LMS. It'll take you to the quiz, and then your score will be documented within the system. Have a great rest of the day.